Thanks for coming. My name's Mark Ambrose. I'm with Border Rangers and Richmond Valley Landcare Network, which is probably the longest Landcare title in the world. And I'm the Indian Mynas project officer. So we've been running a fairly short-term project for the last few months, looking at trying to get a bit of an idea of how many Indian Mynas there are around sort of Richmond Valley, Kyogle area, because there are very few records. Because people know they're out there and nobody goes, oh, that's exciting, there's an Indian Myna, I'll enter that record and send it off to BirdLife or whatever. So very few records. So we're trying to get an idea of how many there are, where they're spread, and also where they're spreading to, so we can try and head them off at the pass where we can. So yeah, just tell you a little bit about Indian Mynas very quickly, just so you get an idea of the scale of the problem with them. They're not just a problem in this area, they're not just a problem in Australia, they're a problem internationally. The IUCN, which are the people who come up with the red list for endangered tigers and all that sort of thing, they have their lists of endangered animals. They've also got their list of the 100 worst pest species in the world. There's only 3 birds on that list, and one of them's the Indian Myna. So that kind of tells you how much of a problem they are. If you go from South Africa, the United States, a lot of Pacific Islands have lost species of particularly parrots, because these guys, once they move in, they just take over. So the main threats in terms of what they do for biodiversity is their hollow nesters. And if you think about the amount of deforestation that we've had in Australia, we think of the massive bushfires. You know, a lot of eucalypts can take at least 100 years before you end up with holes in them. So those nesting sites are really at a premium. So it's hard enough just for our native, you know, things like kookaburras and rosellas and all those hollow nesters, little gliders. You know, they're already fighting for houses. It's a bit like the housing market at the moment. You know, you can't rent a place, you can't buy a place. Well, it's very much like that out there for hollow nesters. And of course, these guys move in and they just take over. They're very aggressive, chase everything else out. If there's already something in a hollow, they'll kick it out. They'll also block up adjoining hollows, even if they're not going to use it. So it's like some, you know, developer coming and buying up a whole load of houses, which are just going to sit there. I'm not going to let anybody move in and live in there. I'm just going to keep them there in case, or until the value goes up or whatever. So these guys just move in. They'll block up holes with, you know, material, plastic, all sorts of things. And so, you know, from that point of view, they're a massive, massive threat to our native species. They also outcompete with breeding, so they might have 3 clutches of eggs a year, and probably 6, 7 per clutch. So, you know, they might produce sort of 18 young a year per pair. In contrast, rosellas might produce 2 or 3. So, you know, again, so not only they take the nest spaces, they then outbreed all of our, you know, a lot of our native stuff really, really quickly as well. They're also a problem in terms of amenity for humans. Anybody who lives near a roost will know that, you know, they make a hell of a racket, make a hell of a mess. They'll get up into your roof, they'll nest there. So, you know, there's sort of a nuisance value for us as well. So the things that bring them in it's food, basically. They'll follow the food. So if you've got a source of food, so if you've got chooks and there's chook feed out, if you've got cattle and you've got a feed lot, horses, you know, any sort of livestock really. Even your dog food, if your dog doesn't eat all its food down, you leave it on the veranda, they'll come in after that. So one way of controlling them is to take food sources away, try to make sure that, you know, when you put your feed out, I don't know, it's, you know, if you're farming and that, very difficult, but particularly if you've just got a few animals and things, try and sort of control their access to food. They love short grass, anything more than about that, they don't like it. So, you know, nice manicured lawn with a bit of food floating around, that's ideal for them. So again, that's one way. But everybody's got a bit of lawn, you know, it's fine. But, you know, that's kind of what they will be attracted to. And the other way of controlling them, particularly where we've got them in sort of numbers, is to use traps, which is a pretty simple way of controlling them. We just use the old PG trap, which somebody invented many years ago, and nobody's really improved too much on it. And the idea is that you use a bit of bait, and the best things we've found, twisties or cheesels. all home brand varieties. The nastier, the cheaper and nastier, the better. I think the colour additives is what sort of gets them going. And red coloured sort of stuff like dog biscuits are really good. Try and avoid grain-based stuff because that will bring your pigeons in and your doves. So try and go meat-based for stuff like that. And basically bait the trap with it. So you might put a little bit in the entrance of these little funnels here, and that'll attract them in. They get in, and if you watch them walk around, you probably noticed Indian Mynas, they tend to walk very upright, whereas some birds just sort of hop. So once they get in there, it doesn't seem to occur to them to actually bend over again and go back out. So yeah, so what they do is, because I think they're hollow nesters, they'll go and find this little gap in a little tube there, a little funnel there. They'll come up through there, and then that's where you can contain them and get rid of them. So it's a fairly straightforward. It's important that you, even though they are a pest, they're still covered by animal cruelty legislation, and you know, they're an intelligent bird. We don't want to put them through any more than we have to. So always make sure that got a bit of cover for them, because it might be, we check them every day, but they're going to be all day on a hot day or whatever. Give them a bit of cover, make sure there's a bit of water and food in there, so at least they're happy up to the point where you finish them off, which can be done by a number of different methods. We tend to use cervical dislocations, just breaking the neck, so just sort of head in there, feet, like that, and that's very, very quick. I know there are other methods as well, and as long as basically it causes unconsciousness basically straight away, then that's okay. People do come up with some quite horrible things, but basically it's get rid of them quickly and as efficiently as you can. The other thing we can do to attract them is keep a caller bird, so you might either bring one in from elsewhere if you're not catching any, or if you get one in there, keep it happy, keep it fed, and it will call out to its mates and tend to attract all the others in. When you go to the trap, you're better off checking your trap, preferably after dark when they've all gone to roost, because they are pretty smart and they'll be keeping an eye, and they'll smell a rat pretty quickly if they see you in and out of, or killing their mates, So, yeah. And I know, shooting them, sometimes you can go out you might get out there once with an air rifle or something, do it again. As soon as you walk out with they're gone. So try to get the stuff out there all set first thing in the morning, and then only go back after dark. I think a lot of people don't succeed with it because they're always checking, or they got the dog who's always sniffing around it, and then or the cat, and then surprise, they're not catching anything. But find a spot where they're coming to ground, get that down. Yes, but some people I know have put them on a water tank, because they've found that's where the birds were going for whatever reason. So I think you just need to read the birds. And different birds do seem to behave, different flocks and in different areas do seem to behave a bit differently. So if they're all coming down onto a shed or something, put it there. Generally though, they'll come to ground because that's where scraps usually are. It's also where grubs and insects are and things. So that's usually the best place. Yeah. 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 And that's it. It's understanding. You've got to try and think like them a little bit and observe them. And the best trappers I've come across, if people go, and even, like I said, this flock seemed to go there. I got rid of those. This new mob have moved in, which might be, say, fledglings, or might be newer, younger birds, and they behave quite differently. And they've gone, okay, well, I need to change things a little bit. So, I think being a bit savvy and observing them, and it's just pitting your wits against them a little bit and just trying to stay one step ahead is really helpful. And it can be really successful, and Canberra's often held up as their project is like the greatest success. They, I think over 6 years, they trapped about 70,000 birds, got rid of 70,000 birds. And that doesn't mean anything one way or the other, really, but they did the sort of like backyard bird watch thing. And I think from the start, the first year they were like the most common bird in people's backyards in Canberra, and after 6-7 years they were down to number 24. That's a hell of a difference. And you know, because they were number 24, that meant all those native bird species that people have been losing out of their yards were coming back in. So it's, you know, it's just something we're going to have to persist with.
They have their own site on Facebook in Canberra.
Yeah, they do. Yeah, it is. Yeah, they've been doing it. You know, we all go to them to kind of go, okay, you know, did that work there or whatever, you know? And I think it's something good that came out of Canberra. It's fantastic. You know, I didn't say that. Next time I want funding. No, but it's a really good program. It's got, and getting community involved and getting everybody onto it, you know, it can make a big difference. And you're not going to get rid of them. Very unlikely we're going to get rid of them in total, but if we can control them in certain areas, and then that gives all the native species in those areas a chance to build up, then it's got to be a good thing, you know. And if we can, and they are very reliant on us, so that the worse we make it for them in terms of cutting down on food, cutting down on, you know, suitable habitat for them, the better it's going to be, you know. And then trapping and things become secondary to just not providing them with the environment. So yeah, that's a potted history of your Indian Mynas.
Just one question. I put up nesting boxes for the Rous.
Yeah.
Is there anything I can do with those nesting boxes to try and stop the mine and make it harder for them?
There are. People have tried different things like putting baffles and things on the front, because I think they tend to like to kind of fly straight into the hole. Whereas your rosellas, you know, parrots are climbers. There's a good website, which I've only just been pointed to, Nestbox Tales on Facebook, if you're on FaceTube. And there are a lot of people on there that have got, one guy's actually directed me to a lot of stuff he's put on, which was only a day or two ago. I need to go back and read through it. But they've got some good designs and things. But that apparently is definitely worth a go, because yeah, your parrots are quite happy to, you know, parrots sort of like to climb, and whereas these guys like to fly straight in. So I think if you can kind of do that, I'm looking into that sort of stuff too. So, you know, I think it's just timber. I think it's just I don't think it really matters what you make it of. All it does is just stops direct entrance into the hole. I don't know. I think, you know, that might be one. Otherwise, it's just a case of persecuting them, basically. Hey, look, you know, natural hollows aren't as perfectly square. You know, that's what they're like. So yeah.
So I can get them in there, but I can't get them. I can't get them to come out with young ones. You know?
No, and the miners won't be helping.
With the off-target species, do they, like, can there be risk of them getting killed from the miners?
No, not really.
No.
I mean, you want to keep an eye on it, but the miners will tend, if the miners go in there, they'll tend to go in there, whereas the your like butcher birds, say, or whatever, they'll just stay in there, and then you just let them go.
Yeah.
I just open it up and walk away.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do it late in the evening.
The cats
Yeah.
all just come in.
Yeah.
While when the miners go, they tend to be easy, early sleepers. I think the miners.
They go off to roost pretty early, yeah.
As soon as they go, I go and just open the thing up, walk
Yeah.
away.
Yeah.
The butcher birds will get out there like real quick.
Yeah.
They're
Yeah.
not so smart.
No. So, yeah, I mean, that's the good idea. That's, I suppose, the thing with this type of trapping is it's non-lethal. It's obviously lethal when you get into there and you get your hands on them. But yeah, you can get non-target species and nothing's going to happen to them. So, yeah.
I don't think it's a good idea to leave them out overnight with birds in them. Because
No.
I've come out in the morning and had once with the birds and they were dead.
Yeah.
And I think the box,
Yeah.
took the cage over.
Yeah. No, basically go after dark, sort them out, and then ready for the next day. So,
So put them out in the morning.
yeah, before early, or make sure that everything's there ready early morning, but clean the birds out later.
What do you think about putting other birds in there, keeping a couple of good in? I've tried it.
Caller birds. It works for some people. Where we've had, if you're catching them, I wouldn't worry. if you're not catching them, sometimes it helps to get them in for the first time. And once you start getting them going in there, then they seem to keep going. So it has worked for people where just baiting hasn't been successful, particularly in areas where there are a lot around, but they're not coming to ground necessarily. So they might be roosting in your trees, but they're not coming down to the trap. So if you put a caller bird in, that can then sometimes just trigger it, get them coming in. I love the short grass, and I also love the fact that you're disturbing, grubs and worms and little insects and stuff. So definitely, a good mow will.
Sorry, I've come to this talk quite late.
Yeah.
I was just wondering, because I live in Lismore and we don't have a lot of these Indian Mynas.
There are areas where there's a few, but yeah.
Oh, in South Lismore I see heaps.
Yeah, there are a lot. Yeah, it's probably more.
Would you recommend getting one of these traps in areas where you don't have many?
There's no point. No. But if they move in numbers, yeah, or even when they just start moving in, yeah, definitely.
And where can you get one of these traps from?
Angie at Lismore, Angie Brace, in ecology sort of planning there. If you get onto Lismore, because we cover Richmond Valley and Kyogle, but I know Angie's got a stock of them. They're just not running an active program.
And you can just loan them out?
Yeah, they do. They just loan them out. So I think they put a deposit on them, and then, so I would, if you ask for Angie, and
From, sorry, where would I ask?
Lismore Council, the City Council. We've got a link on our website too. Grab one of the, there's on the, I should have brought some over, just on the thing, there's an Indian Mynas handbook.
Yeah, are you giving them out?
Yeah, just grab, but have a look, and if you go on there, it actually tells you how many squares to count out. So, count out this number of, like if you use this mesh.
Yeah.
So it really is, I could do it probably.
Yeah.
So pretty idiot proof.
What you got to make sure you do is when you cut out the squares, it'll say 16, you've got to make sure you cut out 18 because you need that extra bit
To
of
tie.
wire on the end to tie it.
Yeah.
Look at it.
Yeah.
And so you can come unstuck
Yeah.
if you just sort of...
Yeah, my only concern with getting one to the depot would be someone needs to be there, from what you're saying, quite often to make sure that there's no...
Even if you use it through the week
Yeah,
and then just cover it up
yeah,
on the weekend. So if there are days that, obviously the more you leave it out, the better.
yeah,
But if you're only there
weekdays.
weekdays, then I would just put it out early Monday morning
Yeah,
and then bring it in on a,
Just open the lid up.
yeah,
or just stick it in or whatever.
That's right, if I go away, just leave it.
Yeah. So that's all you do, and then that's enough time to be getting them in, and
yeah. And when you do catch Indian Mynas, you just drown them?
usually just breaking their necks is the quickest, easiest way.
Is it? Okay.
Yeah. You can use you're not supposed to use carbon monoxide in New South Wales. It's not illegal as such, but they don't but only because most petrol cars have got catalytic converters now.
Yeah,
But which scrubs a lot of the carbon monoxide. But if you've got or if you've got other engines, which I'm sure you guys have, that aren't a car, it could be a mower or it could whatever. That can work, but use cold gas. So use it right when you first start the engine, because obviously it's pretty nasty if you go and give something a whole load of really hot fumes. But when the vehicle first starts up or whatever, that can work pretty well too.
the drowning, is it just...
Drowning's not supposed to be. Yeah. You're better off even just giving. Some people just give them a knock on the head. Some people just chop the head. Basically, if you can cause unconsciousness as quick as possible, they're easy to handle. Like noisy miners, I've had rescue ones, which obviously because they're native, and little bastards have bloody put so many holes in me. Whereas these guys, they're pretty. You just get your hand around the wing, just hold them around the body, and they're pretty easy to. Yeah. But I found the quickest way is just if you get the head in there and you just get hold of the legs. Don't go twisting or anything like that. Just a yank, and you'll feel it. And that way you're not handling them. But you could put them in a big bag and feed some fumes in there.
I think some of the councils have a service to get rid of them, don't
Sorry?
they? Some of the councils.
I think probably somewhere like Canberra. Some places got these really elaborate, like carbon dioxide rather than carbon monoxide. but again, you've got to feed it in at a certain rate. You've got to you can't carry compressed gas inside a vehicle, so then that relies on somebody having a ute or whatever to carry it and secure it, and so yeah. But anyway, but yeah, I mean that carbon dioxide is a recommended method, but it's quite complicated. So, but basically, you want to cause unconsciousness quickly, and no cruelty, basically. But they're they're intelligent birds, and it's not their fault. But drowning's definitely pretty unpleasant. So, but if you got the book there, it gives you a pretty good rundown on how to do stuff. I said have a chat to council. They should have. I'm told she's got some kicking around there. So, okay, thank you very much.